Okay. So first of all, I would like to know about you, and everyone who's listening would like to know more about you.
Well, my name is Madeha AlAjroush from Saudi Arabia. I'm a resident of Riyadh, in the Riyadh city, and I'm a psychotherapist for 25 years. Got my degrees in the United States in psychotherapy, and I went further training in analysis. So I have more of a psychodynamic psychoanalysis training. And that really helped me and support me to go in depth when it comes to human psychic and human support, psychological support. So that's where I am.
Okay, perfect. And if any of our listeners, because I have some followers on Instagram that are my friends actually who live in Saudi, and I know that they would share this as well. If anyone would like to contact you or know more about you, where can they find you besides Instagram, which I will be tagging you as well in the posts?
I also have a very strong website, so please feel free to connect in the website.
Perfect.
Madeha.alajroush at Madeha. Just look up my name and you'll find, Madeha
Perfect.
AlAjroush.
I will make sure I link it all there for you.
Good.
Okay, so the topic that we're going to talk about today is forgiveness. And the reason why as you know, I had a lot of topics in mind, but forgiveness is something that I have struggled with myself, and it actually changed a lot in my life. And once I started working on forgiveness, especially forgiving myself actually for a lot of things, I started to notice it more and more in others that were close to me, and how I wish that they would be able to forgive whatever's happened to them. But if there's one thing that I've learned in terms of any personal development, don't ever try to change someone else. Don't try to force anything else. Rather just focus on yourself. But sometimes I do wish I could explain better to people why forgiveness is important. And I know there is more in this topic that I don't know yet. So speaking to you, which I know would definitely clear this up and clarify more. So that is actually why I want to talk about it.
Right, and I think it's a great subject, and it really touches everybody, because somewhere along the line, somebody, it could be from a father, mother, brother, husband, partner, whoever, probably has hurt us in ways that it's been very difficult to recover from it. So yes, forgiveness is something that we all go through and we struggle, especially when we're told to learn how to forgive, and you must forgive. You can't have a black heart. And that puts the burden on the person who wrong has been done to that person. So it makes it really difficult to navigate. Well, how are they going to do that?
Yes, I agree. Yeah. Okay, so let's start with the first question, which is, what does the general population think that forgiveness is, and what does it actually mean?
In my experience, we were just told that we need to forgive. How and what's the process? You're basically left on your own. You're just supposed to be a good person and forgive. Good people forgive, and bad people don't forgive. And I can't even stress how untrue that is. Now, let's first find out the meaning of forgiveness. What does it mean? I mean, what is forgiveness all about? Forgiveness is a release of resentment or an anger. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation with the person who did the harm. One doesn't have to return to the same relationship or accept the same harmful behavior when you offer forgiveness or accept that behavior. And we're going to go into more details on that. Forgiveness is actually a process that one goes through. It involves allowing yourself to feel the negative emotion you just have toward the offender. And then really putting the wrong into a congruent and authentic, truthful way, making sense out of this wrong that has been done, instead of just keeping it up in the air. And this is how you're supposed to react to the person who did you wrong. Just forgive, and everything is okay, and let's go back. Or I could just forgive and not see that person.
Yes.
It's much more complicated than that, and I think we're going to go into it much more.
Yeah. Yes, thank you for answering that, because I do believe there is a huge misconception on what forgiveness is. So,
yeah.
Quick question, would you say forgiveness requires an apology?
Oh, this is a great question, actually. I really like that. And the answer is absolutely not. No, it doesn't mean you forgive the person because they need to be forgiven. No, they don't need to be forgiven at all. What it is when the person does wrong and you forgive the person, the question I always have, does this really mean that you're forgiving the wrong that has been done onto you? Absolutely not. If you choose to forgive the person, it does not mean that the wrong, you forgave the wrong. Absolutely not. And that's what makes it so hard. You could be angry at the person and not forgive the person for the wrongdoing, and some people come out of it actually empowered, particularly women who have been sexually abused, or people who have been emotionally, verbally abused, neglected. You don't have to forgive the offender at all. And then if that gives you a sense of empowerment to say, I will not forgive, then let that be, and you're okay. See, the forgiveness comes in when you're dealing with yourself, with the issues that you're struggling with, by this enormous amount of bitterness that one carries, enormous amount of anger that one carries.
Yes.
So that's what forgiveness is. But before we really go into that, let's really look at what forgiveness is not.
Okay, that's great.
Okay? So forgiveness is not approving what the offender did. Let me be very clear with that, because that's super important, okay? It is not an excusing the action or denying it or overlooking it. No, it isn't. It is not about just moving on and having a cold shoulder and maybe you'll forget. Maybe time will heal. It's not about that. It's not about forgetting or pretending it didn't really occur, or it's not about revenge, or it's about the need for justice. It's not about you forgive because you just want to calm down. Because I know that feeling, and that feeling could eat you up alive, And it's not also a bargaining with yourself or negotiating with yourself. Well, you know what? The world is saying that I need to forgive. They must be right. And I'm here. Let me bargain. Let me see where about do I forgive? So I think that's super important. Okay. It's actually more about stopping the anger or just feeling neutral about it. So it's really about you. It's about your own feelings and the process you go through it. Okay. It's not even about one time event that you do and then you're completely healed. It isn't. It is a process that takes years, if not, months, if not years. It takes a long time. You've got to be patient with yourself, and you do have to follow through with little steps that we're going to be talking about. So, and it's not also about restoring trust. For example, if you're in a relationship and your partner cheated on you, it doesn't mean that you've got to forgive. And by forgiving, you trust the person automatically. You still have to go through the process of that, of the hurt, of the anger, because particularly in a relationship, there's so much trust put in. The relationship stands on trust. And when that is betrayed, it's very hard to gain the trust and move along. So it has to also, you have to go through the process of that. So it's about really dealing with the bitterness, dealing with the hurt, you know, and dealing with how do you deal with the offender and the emotional energy that comes out of you that is actually hurting you.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Yes, that's incredible what you said now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, so I know that like one of your questions would be, you know, what does forgiveness do if you if you try to sort of forgive someone else? You know, forgiveness for a victim is virtually important for their mental health to begin with, and to feel that you're a survivor and you're not a victim. And the difference between the two is you're a survivor, you are empowered to stand on your own, you're empowered to move on. So you're not a victim. A victim is a person who's completely helpless and powerless due to the wrongdoing that has been done. Now, it moves a person forward rather than keep them emotionally engaged in an unjust or traumatic way. Okay, forgiveness has also shown to elevate the mood, enhance optimism, and guard against anger, stress, anxiety, and depression. And all of these things actually come when you don't forgive. Okay, and again, you're forgiving yourself for not feeling these or processing these feelings so you could move on, not the perpetrator. So that's one of the most important thing when it comes to learning how to forgive. And forgiving the offender may also mean that you also forgive the harmful behavior itself. No, it does not. You do not forgive the harmful behavior itself, because if you forgive sexual abuse that has been done on you when you were a child, it means that, oh, sexual abuse is okay. No, it is not. It could never be okay on you or on the wrongdoing, you know, it cannot. Even if you went to the person, you're still a victim as a child. It's never your fault. A child doesn't know. A child is usually very confused, and there's fear in talking out. You know, there is they feel like they've done some wrong, particularly if that person is a family member, brother, father, uncle. It even makes the situation really complicated. You know, how do you begin to navigate it when you're an adult? How do you work it through? You know, what does that mean? So it's sometimes not forgiving, particularly a person who has been abused, is actually quite empowering, because it gives them a kind of a power not to forgive. You know, in adulthood, if this is the only power they have, then it gives that power of not forgiving that person. It could be empowering, you know, not to. So it all depends on the individual, it all depends on the context, it all depends on the process one actually takes.
That is an incredible perspective, which I never knew about, where not forgiving in certain contexts can actually be very empowering for that individual.
Yeah. Because it happened. It's eating up that you know, that individual. They're living a life full of anxiety, depression, stress, and to release that is actually not forgiving. So by not forgiving, you're actually giving the burden on the individual who did the wrongdoing, and you're not carrying that burden. You're just giving that burden to the person. And that is very powerful. You know, no, I don't forgive you. You carry the burden. You deal with it. And that would release me in the process of working through all of my emotional stress, anxiety, depression, and so on.
That's actually amazing. So in this case, when they release the burden by not forgiving, that is in itself releasing the burden. But in that moment, all the emotions that have been attached with the event, let's say, or not forgiving, they can now are free to work on all those emotions that were in this situation, even though they have not forgiven, because that in itself is the empowerment.
Right. And they become the agent of helping themselves, you
Okay.
know, and
Okay.
trying to help themselves and improve. And it's empowering in itself, you know, because sometimes you're carrying the anger for the person, you know, they're the one who did the wrong, but you're carrying the anger as if you've done the wrong. No, you know, so you give that back to them. And you're not okaying the wrong either. You're not okaying the sexual abuse. You're not okaying any type of abuse. You're not okaying the betrayal. You're not okaying any of the wrongdoing that's been happening. You're not.
That's extremely liberating.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of like general forgiveness, why does it feel so wrong? Why, when you let's say you'll speak to someone about forgiving, like let's say, oh, why don't you forgive this person or this kind of situation? Why does it feel like unbelievably wrong, like absolutely non-negotiable? They will not, they are adamant that they cannot and will not, and inside them it feels outrageous that it could be even suggested to forgive this person.
And if it feels that wrong, you're probably right. It is wrong.
Okay.
And if you're outraged about it, you're probably right.
Okay.
Trust that feeling in you. Don't do it because somebody tells you to do it. Because think about it now, that person that wants you to forgive, it's probably, let's develop a story here. Let's develop a scenario. It's probably a family member that's saying, we've got to have peace in the family. And we could only have peace in the family if you forgive, you know, the member of the family, if the member of the family had did you wrong, you know. It's like, no, why should you? Absolutely not. You know, or if you're a group of friends, oh, just get off with it and let's get on with it and just forgive the friends so we could be back like old times. No, if it's a partner, no. If you don't want to forgive, you don't have to forgive. You don't have to carry that bitterness in you. I mean, with a partner, there's a whole entire way of learning how to talk to your partner and actually teaching your partner how to sort of calm you down, how to not calm you down, how to work it through. I mean, that's a whole entire process, how to work it through, and how do you rebuild the relationship, rebuild the trust from, you know, if it was in a betrayal situation. But it takes two to do that. It doesn't take one. You know, but then if you're angry, of course, allow yourself to be angry. If you don't want to forgive, of course, you know, but don't carry that anger within you, that bitterness, because that's going to bring in the hypertension, the cortisol level increases, depression, anger, you know, comes in. For example, you know, if you go for a coffee shop, and that's your example, okay? If you go for a coffee shop and the person in the coffee shop is not really friendly and you get really angry because they're not friendly, you know, what is that about?
Yeah.
And it's easier to be angry at other people than to really have the anger where it needs to be.
Yes.
Because the anger is actually generalized, and you could have road rage, you could have anger on the on a switch of a button or something or another. You know, it's actually a defense mechanism that you defend yourself, so you don't have to look at the core issue. What's behind this anger? What got you into that anger to begin with? Why are you so angry? Where is the core root of your anger? You see, so if you're angry at this person who sells coffee at the coffee shop, you know, yeah, I mean, a lot of people are not going to be nice selling you things. But the question is, why are you angry at them?
Yes.
I mean, it's just a matter of fact. They, you know, so what is behind that anger? And that goes even with road rage or just being angry at anybody at work. And and I will also add, if you're really an intelligent person, man, you could intellectualize why you're angry, and you're rightfully so, and you back it up with facts, but when you do all of that, what happens is you're backing your anger with intelligence, with facts, and you're giving yourself the right to continue to be angry. That's what you're doing, rather than looking at the source of your anger and working with that.
Wow, I blown away by this. So now I have a question that just came from everything that you said. If someone, because I admit before, maybe 2 years ago when I first started learning about forgiveness, I would be the one, admittedly, telling people close to me, you need to forgive, you need to, okay? But I've learned from that. But let's say in this case, any case, of course, because the feelings are valid, the person is not ready to forgive, they're outraged, whatever. Could they work on, for example, in this case, you were saying anger, just the element of anger, they could work through that. So they're not ready to forgive if they don't want to, which is their right. But the emotions associated with, could they slowly work on one emotion at a time that's falling out and spilling out into road rage or, these kind of things? Would that be effective?
Yes, it would be effective, because you'd be looking at the anger and then working a strategy, steps on how to sort of work it through. But in this talk in particular, we're talking about forgiveness. So it isn't bits and pieces of your behavior. It's the whole entire thing. It's the depth of that anger, where most people have an idea where it comes from. And if you don't, that's still really okay. But you also need to acknowledge that it comes from somewhere. Most likely, if you don't know where it comes from, most likely it's from childhood.
Okay, yes.
Most likely. And if you're sort of, so what happened in your childhood? And that is where you sort of look into deeply, where did someone do you wrong? How are you, and talking about it is really much easier than going through it, because if you go through it and you go through the process, it's very, very painful. People become very creative in burying it, not looking at it, let's just forget it and move on, particularly if you come from a family and you want the family to move on, you're afraid to be angry at a member of the family, and usually, what I say is, you could be angry for their wrongdoing, particularly if it's of a member of the family, a very important person in your family, but it doesn't mean you forgive what they did. So you could actually have two feelings. You could be angry at the person, and you could love the person at the same time. Because you're angry at a person doesn't mean that you don't love them anymore. Again, it all depends on the context and the wrongdoing that has happened.
Yes. Okay. I will just go through some questions that you have probably answered right now. Okay. We have self-importance, and we have a need to be right according to our point of view. Okay. How can we take a step back from this and understand that our point of view is not the only point of view? How can we imagine what happened from their point of view, regardless of how unbelievable that sounds?
And my answer to that is, why do you have to look at their point of view?
Okay, I didn't expect that.
If you're looking at their point of view, you're trying not to deal with your issue. You're trying to look at everybody else and their point of view, and you're ignoring yourself. You're actually one is ignoring their own sense of worth, as if, let me see how they see it. It doesn't matter how they see it. Wrongdoing is wrongdoing. It's how do you feel about it, not how they see it. It's irrelevant how they see it. Irrelevant how they feel about it. Irrelevant. The damage has been done. It's really about you. And calming yourself down or diverting the attention from oneself with looking at another person is a way of actually not dealing with your own issue. It's a great way of not dealing with your own issue.
Hey, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Gotta focus on you. You do not focus on anybody else. You know, if you feel it, it is. Trust that. You are worthy enough to give yourself permission to feel it, to forgive yourself, to release that feeling, to give yourself a sense of peace, empathy, compassion, to let go of that anger to the higher power, where the higher power could in return give you the wisdom. And I'm talking about the higher power in a sense, whatever the higher power is for you, okay? So, and I'm talking about the higher power in a sense of if it's really difficult for you to let go, you know. So what you do is actually give it to the higher power, and then you look at the higher power and you ask for the higher power to give you the knowledge and the wisdom as you carry on your day and every day. And I use that a lot, and actually comes from Alcoholic Anonymous. And I just love that, you know, because sometimes you really are stuck. You don't know what to do with your feelings or your anger. And said, let go to the higher power, and ask the higher power to give you the strength, the wisdom, the guidance to move on.
Wow.
It really works with people who are addicted in Alcoholic Anonymous, and it really works in other forms
Yes.
of dealing with emotions.
Okay. All right. Okay, so actually we've touched on this about, because you will see the most common sentence on quotes or blogs is how forgiveness is about setting us free. But you have touched on this topic a lot now. Is there anything else that you would like to say about because you will see this sentence a lot, forgiveness sets us free. You will see it everywhere. What is the meaning of that?
The forgiveness is setting you free, and you're absolutely right. There's so much in social media, you know, forgiveness. And every time I read it, I said, you know, it isn't fair to tell people to forgive and not give them the process or not give them information, you know. So people are really left by thinking that forgiveness is all about forgiving the person who's done wrong. It's about forgiving the wrongness that has been done. And absolutely not. Forgiveness is really about forgiving yourself, so you could release all these emotions that are keeping you depressed, anxious, angry within, bringing up your cortisol level, bringing up all these hormones that will affect you in a negative way. You know, particularly your impulsive anger, a feeling of revenge, you know, giving that up and go into the process of healing. And the process of healing, it's a process that you've got to sort of vent out, and hopefully you could do it with a very highly experienced therapist that's more into psychodynamic, that's more into psychoanalysis, that would go into the depth of your pain and walk you through the process. You know, not telling you how to do it, but basically walking you through the process of that pain, of that hurt. And then you begin to release, understand, give yourself the validity, actually, that what has happened. You need to talk about it, okay? And you validate yourself by talking about it. You have this person hearing you and validating it also, which is extremely important part of the process. And then understand the depth of the wrongdoing and begin to release that feeling. And as you do that, you will feel that anger, that resentment has gone. You will feel it. And how do you feel it? How do you know you've overcome it? You know because your level of anger has come down, your level of depression has come down, your anxiety, you're more creative, you're more outgoing, you're doing things, you know. you find you even yourself more loving and more, there's more kindness with you, and it's actually it's a very empowering process. It's a grief of loss, when you were sexually abused as a child. It's a grief of loss of that childhood, that innocence, and the anger that goes with it.
Yes.
And a lot of that anger is actually inflicted on the self. How is it inflicted? Sometimes we see people with anorexia. Sometimes we see people with the cutting. That's a lot of anger. But then that anger comes in within oneself. And that's when it really, really becomes very hurtful to the person.
Okay. Wow. We're quite far in. I can tell you, I've learned amazing things in these minutes that we've been on, and you've blown me away with. I didn't have any expectation, because this podcast is to learn from you as well, and for everyone who's going to listen. And I am blown away. There's definitely a huge misconception about forgiveness, honestly.
And I hope what I said made sense.
Yes.
Because again, I go back to the media. You're supposed to forgive with no justification, nothing, just forgive, for the art of forgiveness. And you're also told that, it's good for you. No, it isn't. You don't have to forgive.
That's extremely liberating, because I've never come across that. And I think anyone who's probably had something huge happen to them in terms of, let's say, sexual assault or anything that is huge for that person, this information might be extremely liberating for them.
I hope so.
Yes, I hope so too.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right. So when someone is determined that someone doesn't deserve forgiveness, and we've already gone through that, where if that's how they feel, that's fine. What else would they be suffering with internally? Like, what other personal battles could they be having as well, besides anything else that we've discussed? Could there be anything else that could be linked to believing that someone doesn't deserve the forgiveness, if you understand my question?
Like, if somebody else doesn't deserve the forgiveness because of the wrongdoing, and you as a person don't want to forgive that person, that's okay. But and I really think that could be 50% of the journey. Mm. The other 50 is going through the process. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
of analyzing it and working it through, because it does touch many aspects of your life, particularly if you have backflash of some events that has happened that is so painful. So this pain is actually very alive in you, and that's the work in the process that you do. Can you do it alone? I don't know. It's hard. And why is it hard? It's because when you're doing it alone, you could go so far. But when you're doing it with an expert, what happens is they'll challenge you, and they'll go into uncomfortable areas and get you out of just your comfort zone. And that's the difference between alone, because when you're alone, you'll only go to, yes, maybe painful areas, but comfortable painful areas. Yeah. Not really where it really hurts, and it's like, what I say, it's always like a big pimple in the body, a really, haraj, we call it in Arabic, a real big pimple in the body. And then if you leave it, it's going to eat you away. It's going to be very painful, but eat you away. But if you touch it, it's super painful. And as you're getting all the gooiness, all the horror out, it is super painful. But when it's all out, you feel totally calm, you're more alive, and you're much healthier.
Yes, yes. A question just came to me now, actually. let's say, I don't know how to phrase this question. One person can be naturally more forgiving than another person with no judgment to either of them at all, like each person's journey. Why are some people naturally a little bit more forgiving than someone else, even if they, let's say they had the same situation happen to them?
Doesn't
Why?
matter. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
You never don't compare yourself with someone else. You are who you are.
Yes.
You know, because once you compare yourself with the outside world or with individual people, you're putting down your own self-worth. You're not looking down that if you're feeling angry, you're worthy. You're worthy, and give yourself that permission to feel angry and process it. And it doesn't matter the next person, how they feel or how they dealt with it. It really doesn't matter. This is your journey, and your journey is different than everybody else. So you validate yourself, validate your own feeling, validate the process. And as you do that, I want people to do one thing: tap themselves on the shoulder and say, I am worthy to go through it.
Yes.
Give yourself that permission to feel, to go through it your own way, your own process. Because somebody else's process is not yours. Somebody else's experience is not yours. You can't compare someone else's experience. You can't. Your experience is valid, is real, is true. And give yourself that kind of permission.
Yes. Wow. Actually, talking about permission, would you say that is a key part of actually working through the process, even if the process means that you are not forgiving someone in terms of being empowered? But there is a important part where you have to give yourself permission because maybe the person feels that they're not allowed to go through the healing process?
Right. There's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of shame that goes around it. So you may say, but it was my fault. But I did this and that. And the answer is don't blame yourself. Because with the perpetrator, you know, what happens is they tend to blame. But you're the one who came. You're the one who accepted. You're the one who knew. No. You know, it isn't your fault, period. Period. Even if you are the one who did X, Y, and Z, it's still not your fault. Because your anger and your depression and enrage does not come from a place because it's your fault.
Yeah.
It comes from a place that you're blaming yourself.
Okay.
And carrying the burden of someone else as if it's your fault. And no, it is not. It is not your fault.
This actually brings me to one very important topic. We are also always taught, well, if someone is into personal development a lot, how we shouldn't blame anyone for anything. We should take full responsibility. But of course, in this case, I'm not saying that they should blame themselves or take full responsibility. How do we use that information that we are taught that we shouldn't blame anyone or anything for what's happened to us? How do we fit this together?
I think that this is very suitable for a different context. Okay. But I will address it because it's very important, and I totally understand how the two gets confused. Okay, this context of making the other person do all the healing for you, kind of thing, or do all the work for you, so therefore it's easier to blame, and then you don't take any responsibility. Okay, and the answer to that is, whatever happened. Yes, you could blame the person, but you're the one who's struggling.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not about so much about blame. It's about taking control back over your life and working through it. Okay. So if you blame, that puts you in a place of a spiral. You're just stuck. You know, you've got all that great reasons to blame. Okay, and again, you're looking outside of you. You're looking at another person where the more you blame, the more you don't have to deal with yourself, the more you don't have to look at yourself. And that is a problem in itself. So you could blame, but you have to take responsibility for getting out of whatever behavior or uncomfortable behavior you're in, have it impulsive anger, have it depression, anxiety, or what have you. You've got to walk yourself through out of that.
Yes.
So blaming the other person is not it. And another one, I think, which you pointed out in your questions, was apology. Do you get an apology? Apology is actually quite important, but it's not any kind of apology. They really have to mean it.
Yes.
They have to mean the apology, and also validate the wrongdoing that has been done, and make the person that they've done wrongdoing understand that they understand the impact and the harm that they have done to the other person. So saying, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's not, they have to genuinely mean it in a way where the person feels, that they understand the depth of the harm that has been inflicted on the individual. And that's where it will really help a whole lot if the sorry comes in. But if it's gonna come in and say, oh yeah, I'm sorry, get off with it, come on. We've been talking about this for the last 3-4 years, and I'm sick and tired of this, and you hear that, and it's basically saying, I don't want to take responsibility. Khalas, I told you I'm sorry. Let's get on with it, No. It's not going to go away because of I'm sorry. You also have to tell me what the action you've done and the pain and the depth of the pain that has been inflicted on me. Every time I doze off, every time I feel depressed, you have to empathize with what I'm going and own up that it is your wrongdoing.
Yes.
And that's really much more of betrayal.
Yes.
It's like you want to be in the relationship, but there is a high level of betrayal, and by saying I'm sorry, it's probably not enough for you, for the individual. So you probably want the person who betrayed you to articulate the pain that was inflicted on you, the depth of the pain, and needs to articulate it not once or twice, no, for a very long time. And that would be one of the process of healing.
Yes. If that person who inflicted the pain never reaches a point where they do really understand the pain they inflicted and everything else, can that victim still move forward and heal?
Absolutely, because you should not stop.
Yes.
It's very hurtful to know that they're not sorry. It's very hurtful. But at the end of the day, you become responsible for your own healing. Nobody could do that healing for you. You are responsible. Even a therapist is going to walk by you, but it's not going to give you the keys for the, I mean, you still got to do the walking, meaning that you still got to go through the process.
Yes.
So even if going with the therapist is not going to give you, ways, step 1, 2, 3, and the gates will open and voila, everything is fine. No, you still have to go through the process.
Yes.
So the process becomes your responsibility. But what's powerful about the process is this level of maturity one gains. We all develop a sense of depth in our life and a level of maturity, is because we allow ourselves to grow through these events in our life, as tragic, as horrific as they may be, but you could also use it as a point in your life for growth and development, and you become wiser.
Yes, that's incredible. Incredible perspective as well to look at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I would like to ask you to explain something. A very hard concept to grasp, and please, you can, of course, if I'm wrong, please, is understanding that the action of the person who did something to you is not even about you.
Right.
Is that?
Yeah. Good one. Yeah. Don't personalize it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't personalize it. Meaning that if the wrongdoing was done on you, it's really about their behavior. It's about their wrongdoing, and you are the victim at that time. So don't personalize it in the sense of saying, oh, it must be something I've done.
Okay.
It must be, oh, it's my fault. I haven't been around my husband, that's why he betrayed me. I didn't say no when my father came and sexually abused me. No, don't personalize it.
Yes.
They still carry that burden, and it's not about you, it's not about anything that you've done. It's really about them.
Yes. Okay. And I think that's very important for a lot of people to understand. It's never about the victim.
Yeah, it's not.
Okay. Okay, this is something that it's a concept that I like, and I use it because I'm a personal trainer as well, and I've studied to be a life coach. But the point of this question is, I love the idea of whatever you're working through. Let's say the main goal is at the end, but you're not ready to even reach that point yet. Could you work on small little things daily that could maybe perhaps reach that point? I like to always tell my clients whatever they're working on, the mental part, for example, in the life coaching mindset part, it's like a muscle that they could work on. Would you say that is a great idea? Like, let's say it's too overwhelming to even think about whatever their main goal of forgiveness is. Could they take small steps every day, for example, the coffee shop example, by forgiving small things like, oh, the guy, he spilled coffee on me, or anything that's not even related to the subject that they need to forgive?
I think that it's more about what is your goal. Clarify that.
Yes.
Okay, keep that in mind. And I'm going to use the story of the rabbit and the turtle.
Okay.
Okay, the goal for the rabbit and the turtle is to finish the finish line. And they were in a race.
Yes.
So when I say a rabbit and a turtle, and if this is the first time you heard the story, you would say, well, what a stupid story, because obviously the rabbit is going to win. But the rabbit was looking at the goal. The rabbit was looking at the end finish line. That was the rabbit goal. And therefore the eyes was on the goal. And the rabbit was playing around, and of course he had better legs and he was much faster, and he's going to, reach the end. But who finished the end line? It was the turtle. And let's talk about the success of the turtle. The turtle walked small steps, and she valued the small steps in the moment, right now. And she put value in every small step she took. Okay. She knew that she had a goal, which is the finish line. But she wasn't looking at it. She was looking at the small steps, because it is the small steps that got her to the finish line. It is the small step that had her win the race. Where the rabbit had his eyes on the end goal and never got there. So the moral of the story is, or of my story that I'm giving right now, is actually these small steps that the turtle took, they were values. So if the the coffee man dropped the coffee on you, and you were working on your anger, and I'm not talking about suppressing your anger, and you work through, it's all right. Things like that happen. These are the small steps that are going to get you to your goal. And when you realize that you took that small step, I would like for you to go and say, good girl. And if you do bigger steps, just, or several small steps, you know, go out and buy the best steak, or if you're a vegetarian, buy the best vegetarian in town. I know you live in Dubai or in Riyadh or whatever. What I'm trying to say is reward yourself. Reward yourself for these steps that you took. As you reward yourself, what you're saying to yourself is you're giving value to these steps, and that's important.
This is incredible, because I think a lot of people don't ever clap for themselves for the small wins that they make every day, the baby little progress steps that they take every day. And I think it's beautiful, but a lot of them can't see it because they're so focused on that end goal.
The end goal. That's so true.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. What is the ultimate goal of forgiveness?
I cannot say.
Okay.
The ultimate goal depends on the individual.
Yes.
Because each individual deals with it. But I think that what you need to work through is the process. The process of bringing down your anxiety, bringing down your anger, bringing down your depression, bringing down your impulsiveness, so you could have a better quality of life, so you could live a life you are worthy of.
Yes.
So that individual who did you wrong does not continue to do you wrong, because what happens is when the event is finished and the wrong has been done, you still are suffering. So take away that power from that person that inflicted that pain, and be empowered to stand up and to have a better quality of life. And that's the best thing you could do for the person that inflicted the pain. It's the best thing you could do. Stand up and improve your life.
Yes.
And move forward.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so what steps can someone take today, this week, to if they have no idea where to start, and the idea of forgiveness towards whatever happened is absolutely outrageous, which is valid, as you said. What steps can they take today to start the process?
Well, the process is get yourself into the right perspective on what is happening. Now, recognize that your primary distress is coming from the hurtful feelings that you went through. Okay, the physical upset you're suffering from is also from what you've gone through. Okay, and then forgiveness is really helping yourself to heal through these hurtful feelings that you've been sort of been inflicted with, and get yourself into a positive goal that you could meet. Is these small steps we actually talked about, to work through the experience of the hurt, and work through all the process that you've gone through. And you have to remember that life well lived is not really about revenge. So if you're in a cycle of feeling revengeful, that's also paining you, that's hurting you. Instead of focusing on the wounded feelings, and that's what revenge does, thereby give the person, give them back the pain by actually being powerful in your own life, by walking through the process and developing a sense of resilience and standing and having a better quality of life.
Yes.
I really think that's probably the best revenge you could give anybody who has hurt you.
I agree on that, to be honest. I agree.
Yeah.
There's actually one thing, and you actually answered this question while in the beginning, I think. I just would like you just to, because I want people to hear it. Forgiveness is about forgiving yourself, actually.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that just to make it more clear? Because that is something that is personal to me, and I have learned that, and it's my journey. Anything that has happened to me, small or big, it was all about, I learned now, it's all about forgiving myself.
Forgiving yourself in a sense that you're carrying these harmful feelings, anger, resentment, uh, you're probably feeling depressed, anxious, um, bitter, and that's really quite deep to feel bitter, and that affects every part of your life. So when you forgive yourself, it's really about forgiving yourself for not carrying these feelings. These feelings are heavy and they will pull you down. And part of forgiving yourself is working through it, understanding, validate your experience, saying to yourself, it isn't my fault.
Yes.
I have nothing to do with it. And you could say to yourself, I refuse to be a victim. And sitting in my place saying, all these things have happened to me. Be empowered by standing and saying, I could stand alone. I could work through that. So getting out of this victim role into a proactive role, whatever that may be.
Yes. Okay.
Okay?
Yes. Okay, so we have two more questions. What would be the best resources that have helped you or your clients along the way in terms of forgiveness? Or if there was someone right now who's not ready to go to a psychotherapist or anything like this, what resources could they use today? What could they find?
Well, release the bitterness, meaning don't replay the past hurts over and over because that's painful. Okay, don't hold on to the pain. Are you trying to avoid someone because of the pain? You ask yourself this question.
Mm.
And if you're getting too angry, notice it. Do something about it. Okay. It's these steps, and really, if I have one thing to say, is value the process.
Okay.
The process is going to get you there.
Yes.
You know, and don't expect the process is a quick fix. Is, oh, okay, I've been working on myself for the last few hours, or the last 2 weeks, or the last month, or the last year. It's a process.
Yes.
With some is longer than others, but it's a process. Give yourself the permission to go through the process, because the process is empowering.
Yes.
Very empowering.
Okay. And the last question is, if you could step into my shoes, what would you have asked you that I have not asked you?
Wow, you've really asked a lot of great questions. I just hope that I covered them all. You know, I don't know how to answer that question. Is because you really did a great job.
Well, that's okay.
Thank you. No, thank you so much for asking these vital questions. They're very, very important questions. And all of us at one point in our lives gone through this, you know, and if you're feeling it, you're not alone. And you've really given questions that provide viewers a lot of insights that will take the person and know exactly at least the direction they need to stand and walk through. Yeah. So in many ways, I want to thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. And thank you. I have learned an incredible amount. I came with no expectations. I mean, just because I've gone through my own process of forgiveness doesn't mean that I now know how to help people to forgive. No. I was so open to learning, and you blew me away, and I'm so grateful. And I know that there's many people that they're going to benefit from this the same way that I just benefited from this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll meet again.
Yes, definitely.